This week we take a look at Jacob-Israel. The two are the same. You remember how Jacob is renamed Israel by God after their fight together, and that's recorded there in Genesis 32. We're also given Genesis 33 and 34. We need to read on through on that story of Jacob, and to me it's a fascinating development that there has to be some kind of resolution. We've seen how dysfunctional the family has been, and that reflects who we are as human beings all too often. And there are many families that have all these kinds of problems in it. It's all too common even today. After fighting with God, Jacob, I think, realizes his position. He's tried to do things his own way all too long, all too often. Tried to work through things by following along in terms of deceit, trying to supplant his brother by taking his birthright, buying it, and then misrepresenting himself before his father, as we saw last time, following his mother's idea about what should happen. And then he, of course, is tricked himself by his uncle Laban, and he marries Leah, and then he has to work another 7 years on behalf of Rachel. There's conflict between him and Laban as a result. Of course, Laban chases after him. Eventually there's some kind of resolution there, but then Jacob has to do the hardest thing. Even after fighting with God, he has to face his brother Esau, who, as you recall, had expressed pretty murderous threats towards him. And so as he approaches Esau, he sends ahead the flocks as a gift, and then he has his family go ahead, and only he comes at the end as almost like a supplicant, asking for forgiveness, asking for mercy, recognizing that he has done his brother wrong, and his brother kind of has a legitimate reason to be angry with him. But I love that story, how they come together, how they embrace, and all that antagonism is reduced, and there is resolution. It's a great story of how, even though we mess things up in our family and in our own lives, God can help bring about resolution. But I think this was only because Jacob was willing to face Esau, that he was willing to, after having fought with God, accept God's rule in his life, to say to God, yes, I want to live your way. And maybe he even said to himself, even if this means my death. He has become a very rich man. He has got all these flocks. He has many servants. He's a rich man. And Esau has turned into something of a bandit, to be honest. He comes with this whole posse of people against Jacob, and Jacob knows what's coming, and he's divided up the flocks and the family so that maybe some will survive. That's his thinking. He's trying to hedge his bets even now, because he knows that Esau could do some terrible damage to him and his family. But as I say, there's that resolution that comes, that they embrace, and there is some kind of degree of trust restored. But did you notice it's not entirely complete, because Esau says, come back with me, come home with me, and Jacob says, okay, and then he goes off a different direction, because he's still not absolutely sure of what Esau might be thinking or planning and so on. So in this story, I think we are glad to see resolution, glad to see that there's some kind of, not exactly a happy ending, but something better than there was before. It tells us that we should be looking for bringing resolution, trying to end conflict in the family, trying to live together with one another in harmony. Jacob still doesn't really trust Esau completely, despite all the things that Esau has said to him. Esau lives a very different kind of life. We've seen at the beginning, they're very different kinds of people. Jacob stayed at home. He was, what does it say, a smooth man. And Esau is a hairy man. He's a hunter. And Isaac liked his bit of meat and enjoyed what Esau brought home from his hunting. I mean, there are problems even in all of that. But as I say, at the end of the day, there is a degree of happiness, a degree of acceptance, even though the consequences of their actions still linger on. There's a message for us in all of this today.